Hey everyone, Mario Porecca here, and welcome to 10-Minute Mindset. We have a very special guest here with us today. Juliet Herman is here, and Juliet is a senior level perception and reputation strategist. She is someone that her and I connected on LinkedIn. She's very active on LinkedIn, so I recommend that you go follow her there. And she has a really cool strategy that she talks about all the time called the 3 E's. So we're going to talk about that with Juliet here in a minute, and some other things because we've had some fascinating conversations in the past. But before I bring Juliet on, and we get into the conversation, we're going to do our daily Geo Method because Geo is a way in which we journal/meditate to set clear outcomes, to put intention and action behind those outcomes, and to do it all from a state of gratitude. And Geo is, of course, GIO. I like to work it back to front, so I always start with the O, and the O is outcome. First and foremost, you have to identify what your outcome is. When you think about that outcome, it really needs to be 2 things. It needs to be clear, and it needs to be compelling. When I say clear, I mean specific. So what specifically is it that you want to achieve? And the way that I do this, and I keep track of this, is I have what I call an outcome journal. It's a notebook where all I write in it are my outcomes. And I have that outcome distilled down into one powerful statement, and I write it, read it, and say it first thing every morning, just so there's absolutely no confusion between my conscious and unconscious mind of what we're trying to achieve that day. And I call this statement a living, breathing, organic statement. What I mean by that is it evolves over time. When I write that out and I go and take action and try to attract that outcome into my life, I take a look around and I notice little distinctions around me. I notice the opportunities. I notice the feedback, if you will, that the universe is giving me. And I take all of that into consideration when I come back the following day and reiterate that outcome statement. And if you look at what I wrote today for my outcome and you look at what I wrote like 2 to 3 weeks ago, it's kind of different, but it's different in a good way because it's evolving. It's becoming more clear. It's becoming more specific. And clarity is power. The clearer we are in what we want, the faster our minds can get us there. And having that clarity also allows me to more vividly visualize what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like, what the experience is going to be like of attracting that outcome into my life. And when that happens, it becomes more compelling. And that compelling part is so powerful because a thought in and of itself has very little creative power, but a thought backed with emotion becomes infinitely powerful. And a thought backed with emotion is what we call a desire. And when a desire is strong enough, it leads to action. And when I say action, I really mean the I of Geo, which is intention, meaning now that you know what you want and why you want it, what do you intend to do about it? And when it comes to intention, I start with that outcome. You always start with that end in mind, and I like to craft 3 action items that I'm going to do today. 3 small things that I believe will help me build momentum towards that outcome. So they're action items that I intend to do, and that's where the word intention comes from. And those 3 things are, number 1, what's one thing I can do right now within the hour? Because right now my attention, energy, and focus are squarely on my outcome. I have no outside interference. So what's one thing that I can do right now? Because as soon as I step foot outside that door and start my day, all bets are off. Life happens to all of us. It comes at us, and when it does, there's certain things we need to deal with, and our focus gets split in many different directions. But right now, first thing in the morning, you have the power. Your complete focus is on that outcome. So what's one thing you can do right now to harness that power of focus and create that feeling of achievement first thing in the morning to build massive amounts of momentum towards that outcome? Number 2, what's one thing I can do within the 24 hours of today so that by the end of today, I've accomplished at least 2 outcome-focused action items? And if you just do those 2 things, but you do them consistently, over the course of time, those results will begin to compound and you'll begin to build massive amounts of progress towards your outcome. And finally, what's one thing that you put a little bit of attention, energy, and time into each day? Maybe it's something that takes a little longer to unfold. Maybe it's something that you work with others, collaborate with others on. But at the very least, what this really does is it gives you that long-term focus so that that outcome is always in the back of your unconscious mind, so that no matter what you're doing, when an opportunity pops up or something that could be an opportunity pops up, you'll recognize it and you'll take action on it. It's not that some people have more opportunities than others. Opportunities are abundant. They're all around us at all times. The question is, are you clear enough about what it is that you want to achieve so that you're able to readily recognize those opportunities? And then are you compelled enough to take action on them and leverage them to build towards your outcome once you recognize them? And finally, the G in Geo is the X factor in all this. It's the state in which we're in when we do this. And for me, that's gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most powerful states we can be in because when we're in a true state of gratitude, we cannot feel a negative emotion. And the most powerful person is the person who needs nothing. And the person who's truly grateful needs nothing because they're already appreciative for what's already there in the current moment. And when it comes to gratitude, this is where I like to pull meditation into the mix. I like to close my eyes for 5 minutes every morning and really get into that state. Not just think about it or say it, but really get into that state and feel those feelings of gratitude. And when I get into gratitude intentionally on a consistent basis, gratitude also begins to show up in other areas of my life. And when I get into this meditative state and I get into this state of gratitude, I focus on 3 things. Number 1, what's one thing I get to receive every day? What's one thing that's maybe a small thing that I tend to overlook, or maybe I've become a little familiar with, or take just a little for granted because it happens so often, but now I can focus on it and create massive amounts of gratitude around it, because it is those small things that lead into the big things. And when we get really grateful around those small things, and when the big things happen, we can get into gratitude even faster and even deeper. Number 2, what's one thing I get to give every day? Because it isn't giving that we truly receive, it through contribution that we create true fulfillment. So what's one thing that I get to give to the world that creates fulfillment within me that I can create massive amounts of gratitude around? And finally, what's one thing that I am? Because our identity leads to our actions, which leads to our results. As human beings, our greatest need is to show up and act consistent with who we believe we are. And who we believe we are comes from the things we hear the most. And the things we hear the most comes from our own self-talk. So audit your self-talk, become your own best friend, become your biggest fan, and intentionally condition yourself to take on the identity and show up as the person capable of attracting those outcomes you desire into your life. And if you do this consistently, you will begin to break through those barriers, overcome those obstacles, and you will begin to actively experience those outcomes you desire each and every day. And that's Geo. We do it every single day. Gratitude, intention, outcome. Do it first thing in the morning to set your day. Then do it throughout the day when you need to come back and refocus on those outcomes you desire, put intentional action behind them, and do it all from a very powerful, resourceful state of gratitude. And now, it is my honor and privilege to bring onto the line Juliet Herman. She is a senior level perception and reputation strategist. She improves customer retention by enhancing organizational performance and productivity to create a better experience. And her specialty is in connecting businesses with causes that are in alignment with their brand and core values. You can find more about her on LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn and search Juliet Herman. You'll find her. She's posting videos all the time, which are fantastic. Juliet, welcome to 10-Minute Mindset.
Thank you, Mario. It's great to be here.
It's great to finally have you on the show. We've been talking for a while now, and now it finally happened.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Let's talk a little bit. I know when I see you on LinkedIn, you're posting videos all the time, and I love how dedicated you are, and I love your message that you put out into the world. But something I notice about your videos is they're always based on what you call the 3 E's. So maybe you can explain to us, what are the 3 E's, and just give us the lowdown on it.
Sure. So the 3 E's is a strategy that I developed. It's essentially a framework that really assists people in how to move forward in their life, how to reach their goals. I mean, at the end of the day, that's truly what it is. So the first E is embrace. So you need to really understand, do a deep dive, figure out what is the problem. So you're essentially accepting what the problem is. You're not judging it, you're just accepting it. And then the next E is engage. And that is taking inspired action. And I want to emphasize the word inspired because a lot of us take action and it's just moving in a circle. You want to make sure it's inspired based on what you're trying to achieve. And when you figure out all of those steps that you're taking, you're then going to evolve. And evolve is really growing. That's what your outcome is. That's when you've reached your outcome. And this strategy is something that I use and recommend that people use both in business as well as in life. So it's actually applicable every single day.
Where did this come from? Is it something that happened earlier in your life as you were going through your professional life that this just came to you as an epiphany? Is it something that you put together in little pieces and figured out over the course of time? How did you discover the 3 E's?
Well, actually, that's a great question because I realize in hindsight, this is something I've been doing my whole life, at the very least my working life, and I've been working since I was 17. And then, interestingly enough, when I started to post on LinkedIn and made my first video in November, that's how recent this is, I literally wanted to put words to it because I wanted to introduce myself and my framework. And I thought, aha, embrace plus engage equal evolve. It's really easy to understand. I'm really into alliteration. That's how I came up with the 3 E's. And it's just simple to remember. And I also tie it in with A's if you think about it. So embrace is accept, engage is action, and evolve is ascend. So there are lots of ways that I play with it, but at the end of the day, it is the 3 E's. So thanks to LinkedIn Video, that's how it came about. It was my impetus.
If you could only have 1 E, which one would it be?
You know, I think we'd all want to focus on evolve, but that would make life really boring. If we were just evolved, I mean, you would never appreciate it. It's analogous to if there were no rain, there would be no flowers. So I would hook on to engage because taking action, isn't that the fun of the journey of life? I mean, it's really being in the thick of it and taking the action and hoping you're going to succeed, but not knowing what the outcome is going to be. So I think it's really the journey is in the action. So it's engage.
How does someone who's hearing this for the first time, like say you're listening to the podcast and you're like, wow, this is awesome. The 3 E's, never heard it before. Makes sense. How would you recommend to them to implement it into their life in a very realistic, practical way?
Sure. So I would say, we all have things that we're trying to do. Let's say you have an issue with procrastinating. So you want to get over procrastination. Well, you can't just wake up one day and say, well, for most of us, I should say, we can't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to stop procrastinating. So you have to figure out, well, what are the steps that I need to take in order to stop procrastinating? But before that, is procrastination actually the problem? Well, it really isn't. What is causing you to procrastinate? So you do this deep dive. That's when you're embracing, Mario. So you're thinking, well, why am I procrastinating? Am I procrastinating because I have a fear behind that? So for instance, if I have to do a project for work, am I procrastinating because I'm worried that I'm going to get judged, that people are going to think my work is not up to par? Well, then you really have a fear. You have some sort of inferiority complex. You have self-doubt. So that would be your embracing. You have understood what the real root of the problem is. And then when you want to take action, you think, okay, I have issues with self-doubt. Well, what are action steps that I could take to stop procrastinating? So again, in this example, we're looking at, let's say it's a PowerPoint that you need to do. You really need to do this project. So what are the baby steps, the real small micro steps that you can take in order to do this PowerPoint? So the first step is, well, who is the audience? Okay, this is a client that I have. Great. Now that you figured out what the audience is, or who the audience is, you then think, well, how am I going to speak to them? What are things that have been done for them in the past that have resonated? Okay, now I know that piece. So now I'm going to devise a micro step, just a small step. So maybe it's with that PowerPoint, maybe it's just saying, you know what, today all I'm going to do is one slide. And what is the purpose of that one slide? Well, that one slide is to introduce my company. Terrific. So you're going to take that, you're just going to repurpose material that you have. So this is a really simple step. And then tomorrow, my goal is to really understand what my client's problem is. And then that would be the next step. And figure out what your deadline is so you see how long you have. Maybe you only have 2 days to do this. But I guarantee you, if you then time block and you say, well, over the next 3 hours, I'm going to do one more slide. So it's really, you're just patting yourself on the back. You're recognizing your accomplishment of just doing this micro step. And by the end of it, you'll have the whole presentation done before you know it. And then after all of that, you will have evolved. But when you evolve, you want to acknowledge in which areas you've evolved. So in this sense, you have proven to yourself that you can come up with a game plan, you can come up with a strategy, take action on it, and that you can overcome your fear, your feelings of self-doubt. So terrific. So you have evolved in that you have overcome your fear of self-doubt in this one area. You've increased your confidence and you've proven that you're strategic. So the next time you start procrastinating, you just go through this whole process again. So now you've actually developed a method for you to overcome procrastination. And isn't that wonderful?
That sounds wonderful to me, Juliet. Now let me ask you this. I was reading through your history a little bit here, and I see that you are a change agent and communications whisperer who facilitates greater communication internally and with all stakeholders. What is a communications whisperer?
Okay, so that was a term, a little fun term that I came up with because I really, really enjoy communicating, whether it's verbally or written. And whenever I'm communicating, I have my audience in mind. And I also have the subject in mind. I want to do it in a way that is playful. So, if it's, I was talking the other day about how can you go about building a website? Well, I thought, oh, great, building, that's construction. So I really came up with communicating how to build a website in a way that you are, I said, build a website and dance around the construction site. Just something playful like that. And I do that in every single post that I have on LinkedIn. There's always a quote that I've written myself specifically for the purpose of communicating the message that exists. Because at the end of the day, all of my posts are designed to inspire people to take action so that they could then present themselves in a more professional way, or that it can solve a business problem for them. So I want them to realize that everything's achievable. And I do that in sort of a poetic and playful way. So that's one way. That would be written. And then verbally, I come up with these strategies like the 3 E's, such that my audience is really able to hear it. And in this case, since we're talking about LinkedIn, the stakeholders would be everyone in the LinkedIn universe, regardless of whether they are interested in inspiration or they're interested in help for how to raise their family. or they're looking for business help. So those would be the stakeholders. Certainly in business, the various stakeholders would be internal, external, Wall Street, etc. So that's why I call myself a whisperer.
Are there any other platforms people can find you on other than LinkedIn?
I just started a YouTube channel, and I actually have a website. So I don't know if you'd necessarily call this a platform, but it's my website, and it is julietherman.fyi.to. And it's also in my bio as well. So if you are connected to me, you could just look under the contact information for it.
Fantastic. Juliet Herman, thank you so much for being here. And Juliet's promised to come back tomorrow, so we're going to have a second part to this conversation tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that. So Juliet, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to picking up the conversation tomorrow.
Thanks so much, Mario.
And I want to remind everyone to visit us, 10minutemindset.com, join the Facebook group, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on a brand new 10-Minute Mindset.